Hey everyone, good to see you all. Thanks for coming to the first one. My name is Kalyani and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cobalt Labs. And we are building AI-powered risk and compliance for financial institutions. Some of you who were here last year may also recognize us. We were a demoer last year as well. So just to kind of lay the land of the problems that we're trying to solve at Cobalt and our particular approach is we are laser focused on the problem of third-party risk review as well as kind of compliance reviews on vendors, fintech partners, kind of internal policies and materials. So kind of setting the stage at the land today is these kinds of reviews are extremely documentation heavy. We have folks that are reviewing mountains of policies, procedures, InfoSec materials, disclosures, et cetera. And these are obviously burdened with manual research and review, but the real issue here is that the banks we work with have seen before implementing Cobalt. Number one, this was just slowing down time to market and just revenue realization of key partnerships, bringing on third parties. Subject matter experts are being pulled in when they don't need to be, and everyone is just quite inundated with work that people just frankly don't have to do anymore because it's slow, it leads to bloated headcount, and it's not as accurate as it needs to be, especially when there's an issue on page 753 of a SOC report. That's not something that people are going to be able to find. So generative AI is best at reasoning with large amounts of unstructured text, and this is something that we've leveraged to actually power the third-party diligence process and really make some interesting changes for the 25 plus banks that we're now kind of working with today. So talking about our core use case of third-party diligence. So like I mentioned earlier, Cobalt automates these risk and compliance reviews of fintech partners and vendors. So for sponsor banks, we're working with banks like Celtic who are running all of their compliance and InfoSec and risk reviews on their fintech partners on our platform, but also other banks that are also using Cobalt to purely run their TPRM vendor risk review process. So what are we actually doing? So Cobalt has automated agents that plug in live to the ecosystem of enforcement actions, rules and regs from every single major regulator, all upcoming obligations, even reviewing things like, consent orders, enforcement actions, guidance from regulators. So we plug into all kind of external obligations that a bank might have. And so again, kind of models that screen against all these sources in minutes. And so then if you think about what Cobalt is then able to do, instead of having human teams, filling out these spreadsheets with 500 questions of different controls that have to be identified throughout documentation, identifying where reports might, not necessarily align well with key frameworks like NIST and SOC and ISO, Cobalt is actually able to automatically screen that mountain of thousands of pages of documentation, identify any of those gaps, automatically fill out risk assessments, automatically generate that follow-up reporting, and really just consolidate a lot of the paper pushing that's just inundating teams today. And this is all still pretty high level, so I'll walk you through, again, the high level structure here, and then I just want to take a couple minutes to show you an example of what we're doing today for the banks that we're working with. So like I mentioned, Cobalt syncs with the external regulations, then our AI platform actually reviews the mountain of documentation that's being done as part of the diligence process, and then after that, the banks working with us use Cobalt to actually identify issues and findings, flag gaps, outdated materials, specifically non-compliant or risky language, and actually tracking remediation, working with their risk assessments, and really just streamlining that process to cut down a lot of the key time that a lot of this work takes. So a couple initial screen grabs from the kinds of things that Cobalt is able to do. Here's a quick example with kind of a demo. In this case, this was a kind of AML policy and procedure document. This was a document that was for a larger bank. It was over 300 pages long. Cobalt immediately identified in section 4.6, there's an insufficiency in OFAC screening procedures. They were able to find this, remediate it, and it was something that their team had missed in the fintech partners policy for multiple years prior. If we look at this example, this is an example of a bank that was actually using Cobalt to automatically fill out in this case, 500 questionnaire and risk assessment. So instead of sending a vendor a questionnaire, they took the 100-something documents they asked a vendor for, they automatically pre-filled everything using Cobalt, and Cobalt was actually able to go in, highlight where every single control was found, and they were able to actually take their third-party risk management process from 7 weeks to 2 weeks within implementing Cobalt, and that happened this January. So just last thing to mention here is that we've kind of been live for a little while now, delivering results. There's a number of banks you'll see on the screen that are here today, so feel free to talk to them about how they're using Cobalt. A couple of quotes that I want to call out here are specifically kind of Emily from American National Bank was able to report that using Cobalt, transformed how they analyze third-party relationships, and they've actually been able to improve their capacity to scale and address risks as they bring on more vendors and more fintech partners. And then we work with all kinds of financial institutions, including fintechs and credit unions. So from a credit union recently, this is where they were able to kind of report that within just 5 minutes of getting a vendor's documentation, Cobalt already told them exactly where are the issues, where do they need to follow up, and it's their default first step before any human being gets involved, and they start from that 80% mark. And so I know there's folks actually from Celtic and Tab who are here today who have also offered to talk to anyone about how they're using Cobalt. So feel free to reach out to them if you see them around today. So a really quick screen grab moving here. This is just like a kind of simplified sandbox environment that we work in. I just want to show you a quick example of how you can actually use AI to not just automate the work, but actually use it to verify AI's work so efficiently that you don't even need to worry about whether you can trust AI's outputs or not. So let me kind of put my money where my mouth is here. I want to show you a quick example here, where in this case, we have kind of a sample set of an incredible amount of policies, procedures, documentation. Think like, this in total is about like 10,000 pages of documentation. You'd imagine that if you want to know the answer of whether or not, this vendor has recovery time objectives that are within your risk appetite, it would take someone quite a bit of time to figure out which documentation is this in, and even if AI gives you the answer, how do you know it's the right answer? And it might take you so long to verify it that you might as well have just done it manually yourself. So with Cobalt, we're actually able to automatically identify where are the specific controls in place, so that if there's any time where you want to override an AI answer, we actually have human AI collaboration. And this has been the way that we've worked with regulators to develop the system that actually aligns with what they need to see banks to do. So I'll kind of leave you guys with this. I think when you're thinking about how you can use AI to really bring efficiencies with some of these systems, the most important pieces to think about are like, what are the areas where we can purely automate to AI while leaving this really nice transparent chain that we can use to automate risk assessments, reporting, filling out questionnaires, identifying gaps, with the ability to verify AI really easily and kind of work in conjunction with it. So we've been able to develop this in a way that's kind of trustworthy enough that there's actually, there's 2 state regulators that are now piloting Cobalt to review bank materials during exams. And we were also just endorsed by the UBA as the only AI vendor they've ever endorsed. So feel free to come talk to me if you ever want to learn more, but thanks again for the time.